This is the third in a series of presentations on digital literacy and online sources. This video discusses strategies for critically assessing online sources. When assessing online sources for academic purposes, it is important to take a critical perspective. Be willing to think through different arguments, if only to get a better understanding of your own views and the views of the sources you are working with. As information proliferates online, it is vital that the scholarly enterprise incorporates a robust digital literacy. Critically approaching online sources, just as with any typical print source, means to assess the argument. Arguments are assessed by examining the theoretical framework or worldview the argument is grounded in, and any reason or rationale for making the argument. Digital technology allows anyone to publish information online, and websites or online applications can grant a perceived legitimacy to a source it does not necessarily deserve. One useful method for analyzing sources is to imagine the range of views that are expressed on a topic. This is not to say that all perspectives are equally valid, but that it can be useful to know the range of views to understand how a source sits in relation to the overall discourse. In the working example used here, I want to critically assess the Cato Institute as a source on climate change. I visit the Cato Institute website and familiarize myself with their information and the theoretical or analytical frameworks they deploy to make their case. At the same time, I also try to think about the source in relation to a spectrum of views on climate change. Here is a graphical representation of some views on climate change. Note, this is a highly simplified model of views on climate change intended only for the purposes of our example. The spectrum of views runs from total acceptance of climate change on the far left to outright denial that climate change is happening at all on the far right. Catastrophism on the far left is the view that because climate change is so dangerous, humans are likely to be extinct in the next few decades. Somewhat more moderate views are those espoused by groups like Bill McKibben's 350.org, which argue that climate change is happening and that the looming crisis must be addressed by swift reforms. What I classify as weak denial are views that acknowledge the climate is changing, but that nothing urgent needs to be done about it. Strong denial argues that the climate is not changing at all. Looking at the Cato Institute sources on climate change, I see that the webpage accepts that climate change is happening and that it is caused by humans, but there is no urgent need to do anything about it. This would be classified in my analysis as weak denial. This method of thinking through a spectrum of views is just one way to critically assess sources. The important point is that sources need to be understood with respect to the argument they are making, and how that relates to the broader discussion on a particular topic. Critically approaching sources will help you to better understand your own perspective and ultimately to make stronger arguments.